you must be Clinton.
Hi! Yes, nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Michelle. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Thank you for being a part of our documentary.
Oh, of course. I'm excited. Glad you guys got back to me about doing this.
Well, your story sounded very interesting, so we wanted you to come in and tell us about it. So, how this is going to work is I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and feel free to answer them in any way you wish. Just please try to keep profanity to a minimum unless it's part of the story.
Absolutely. Sounds good, ma'am.
Perfect. Okay, so tell me about this hunting trip you went on with your family.
Well, it was over winter break about a year ago. My dad had decided to finally take me to the hunting cabin, kind of like a man's initiation kind of thing. So, my dad and I had we went to this hunting cabin owned by my uncle, and went there first night. My oldest uncle skinned a deer. It was very gross and disturbing, but you know.
Yeah.
And then the next day we just had our coffee and stuff. And so to get used to the rifle, I took up my dad's BB gun. I went up to the top of one of the stands in front of the cabin we were staying at, and I started shooting cans and pipes and stuff. You know, not hitting anything. Okay, I did hit a couple of vultures. I mean, what kid hasn't hit a couple of fucking vultures? You know. Sorry.
Fine.
So, and then I came back down and I asked my dad about where it was best, where the heart of a hog was, so I could make the kill as quick and painless as possible. And he said to me that that's something you got from your mother, Quentin. You don't got a mean bone in your body. Now, your sister's got quite a few, but that passed over you without leaving a mark.
I'm guessing your sister made a couple swings at you before.
Yeah, she has.
So, then if I recall correctly, you said your father and uncle went out, leaving you and your oldest uncle alone in the cabin?
My dad and my uncle went out to put out the corn feed inside the feeders to see if we could get the animals to come out that night. And I went inside to make myself some food because we had bought in the grocery the day before with sandwiches and chips and shitty food. We didn't buy any substantial sustenance. So I was making the sandwich, and my uncle comes in, and it was strange because I hadn't talked to him in 8 years. I never really understood why. And he comes up to me and he just asks how I've been. I said I've been good. He says life's been good with him. Everything's good with the family. I said that's cool. And his voice got really low, and he started talking about my grandfather.
I'm guessing your grandfather was a touchy subject.
Yeah. My family hadn't really talked about him in 3 years. He had passed away 2 years ago, and it was kind of a shock when he started talking about Papa.
Papa, I'm assuming, was your grandfather?
Yeah.
What did you and your uncle talk about?
He asked me if I knew why I hadn't seen Papa in 5 years, and I said, I don't know. No one's really ever talked about it. And apparently my grandfather was in jail, and for a crime he didn't really go into detail about, and he called him a monster, a creature of opportunity. I've never heard anyone speak so maliciously of him.
Your grandfather was charged with pedophilia and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Is that correct?
Yes. He said there wasn't a granddaughter he didn't get to.
Do you need a moment?
No, I'm fine. Continue.
What was going on in your head when you heard him say these things?
I was angry. Furious. I never could imagine a son saying such things of his own father, as if he was some loathsome beast like traveling in the muck that we would shoot up there. He started to cry when we talked about how vengeful he was, how he wanted to see his father in chains for life, to avenge the violation of his daughter. He then beseeched me, I guess is the best way to put it, saying he had to protect his daughter since he couldn't do it before, how betrayed he felt when he learned his own father had broken his trust in that way. He looked at me almost begging me to say that his actions were justified, that he wasn't in the wrong in any way for what he did, that it was for the honor of his family.
And what did you say to him?
Nothing. I didn't say a word to him. I stood there with the rage building up inside of me, angry at me, angry at him, at myself, at God. But there was no greater rage in me than for my uncle for what he asked me to do next. He asked me to not tell my dad that we had talked about this.
Did he say why?
Because the family was finally coming back together.
Do you think that was rude of him? To ask such a demand of you when it obviously affected you so much?
I don't know. Whether he had good intentions or not, I'll never know.
What did you do after that?
He hugged me. I could feel the tears falling down his face only onto my head. I hugged him back, but not as tightly as he hugged me. Like he was clinging to the only hope, he said, of being redeemed from his vengeance. He gave me his phone number after that in case I ever needed anything. I haven't talked to him since.
After your conversation, what did you do? Where was your head?
I was torn between anger and guilt. I wanted to know from my father how much my uncle had said was true. But the guilt of ruining the one chance of our family being okay overwhelmed me. I felt like this immense secret was on my shoulders and I had to bear it alone in silence the rest of my life. The pain I felt in my gut was indescribable. I felt like I was choosing whether to destroy our family or deal with that painful secret alone. I was going to suffer no matter what decision I made. I just wanted the pain to go away. My uncle made me hate Papa. He had convinced me to hate a man who I used to hand presents out at Christmas time with, a man I had wanted to see for 5 years, and I couldn't even see him before he died. I felt so terrible and alone. I took my uncle's rifle, walked up to the furthest stand in the woods, and just sat there with the barrel under my chin. I never wanted to end my life more than I did in that moment. I was alone in my suffering. I couldn't tell anyone. I felt selfish, cruel no matter what I did.
What stopped you?
Huh?
What stopped you?
My dad once told me something Papa had said about me. Out of all his grandchildren, Papa cherished me the most and during his final years. You chose to forgive him for what he did, my dad told me. And you still loved him as much as you did before you learned the truth.
And what did you learn from that?
Papa wasn't the reason our family split up. My uncle's inability to forgive him and his bloodlust for vengeance was unforgivable in the eyes of his siblings, especially my dad. Everyone had forgiven Papa except my uncle.
Do you blame your uncle for your grandfather's death?
I blame my uncle for never being able to see Papa again. But I don't blame him for his death.
Do you forgive him for persecuting your father? Your grandfather, I'm so sorry.
Yes. Yes, I do.
How did your uncle feel when you gave him your forgiveness?
I didn't tell him. And I still choose not to tell him.
Why? If you have the ability to bring your family together, why did you choose not to?
Because it isn't my forgiveness that he needs. My uncle needs to forgive himself for what he did. I think he sees the wrong in what he did. He just can't accept it.
Do you think that he will ever be able to accept it?
I want him so that our family can finally be prepared. None of us can move him to accept something. He has to do it himself.
Why do you consider this story your coming-of-age tale?
It was the first time I created my own opinion about my family situation and understood everything on my own. I had chosen to forgive my uncle and come to terms with Papa's death. For the first time in my life, I had control over my emotions and addressed them morally and logically on my own.
So you feel at peace with your grandfather and your uncle?
Yeah. Yes, I think I do.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're okay after all this time. Thank you for sharing your story with us.